President Obama is spending the last few weeks that he will be president trying to preemptively hem in a little bit of the fossil fuel extremism that we can expect from the incoming Donald Trump administration. And one of the ways that he's doing that is trying to stop certain areas from being developed, perhaps by Rex Tillerson's business associates, once Trump becomes president. Obama banned all future offshore oil and gas drilling from nearly 120 million acres of land in the Atlantic and Arctic Oceans. The bans include a series of underwater canyons along the Atlantic, stretching from Massachusetts to Virginia, and virtually all of the U.S. Arctic, including the entire U.S. Chukchi Sea, first time I ever said that, and all but about 2% of the U.S. Beaufort Sea. I think I nailed it, but you know what? Just in case, I'll make a fool out of myself. Now, to be fair, and this was not included in the original reporting, producer Jen tracked this down, Obama did not extend permanent protections to much of the outer continental shelf off of the Virginia coast or to areas off the coasts of the other southeastern states. And this is an area that's been a little bit contentious in terms of some of the environmentalists fighting to protect it, and occasionally it looks like they're going to grant some leases. And so it's pretty important that that was not included in the protections that Obama made. I think we have a little map here. It's going to show some of the areas in the Atlantic. So you're seeing some areas there that are going to be withdrawn from development. And the reason that he was able to do that is through using the 1953 Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act, which states the President of the United States may, from time to time, I love the way they used to write that, old-timey, withdraw from disposition any of the unleased lands of the Outer Continental Shelf. Now, what's really interesting about that language is it doesn't say he may withdraw it, or he may put it back up for consideration. It just says he may withdraw it. And considering that there will almost certainly be legal challenges to this once Trump becomes president, that is, of course, important. Understand that this has been used before. They've taken areas from disposition. It's never been given back before. While presidents have modified decisions from their predecessors to withdraw areas from drilling, they have never rescinded them altogether. A legal opinion from the U.S. Attorney General back in 1938 said similar designations do not imply a power to undo, and there have been no federal court rulings on the provision. Now, that does not stop the American Petroleum Institute representatives from saying they are going to fight this tooth and claw.
Of course they are, because they've got money to make, and so maximize profit despite all costs to the rest of us. Okay, great credit to President Obama on this one. So we ask him to take strong action, and often we get mid-level action, if any at all. But here, wonderful job. And John's right, it is technically and legally hard to unwind this. Once the president says we must preserve these areas, the law doesn't say you can unpreserve them. Right?
Yeah.
Now, Bill Clinton preserved 300 million acres from oil and gas drilling and designated a marine sanctuary. George Bush did unwind 50 million acres of that and gave fossil fuel leases. So I don't know if that's apples and oranges to this.
The marine sanctuary thing is a slightly different thing.
That's right, yes. So,
which Obama also did that a couple of months ago. An absolutely massive area was designated as a marine sanctuary, which I think we gave him credit for at the time.
Yes, and so maybe they have a better argument on that, given the precedent that Bush rewound some of it. No, only 50 out of 300 million acres. But on this law that he used, there's no precedent for unwinding it at all. Now, that doesn't mean Trump isn't going to do it, because he doesn't seem to care about rule of law at all. But the courts at some point would get to a decision point and go, you either can or can't do that. And so that's going to decide whether these bans are temporary. And even so, look, buying time is great.
Yeah.
Or if they're permanent, and which would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so, again, great credit to President Obama. The southeastern stuff, it's not this, but I like to think that he was like, the South, you want to keep voting for Republicans? Okay, go ahead. No, you can drill off your coast. And if it spills and destroys Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and other places, what are you going to do? Keep voting Republicans, see what happens.
Yeah.
That's not why he did it.
I doubt it, yeah. Now, look, a lot of people would probably assume, I guess Trump won, so snowflake, just buckle up, or whatever stupid language Trump voters have been told to say over and over on Twitter. But it turns out that this is not actually, doing far more drilling is not actually popular, even amongst the people who voted the plurality for Trump. They actually didn't get the majority there. 75% said that they preferred alternative energy to the production of oil and gas in a March Gallup poll, and that includes 51% of Republicans. And this is another one of those things, and I love when we spotlight these, where it doesn't seem to really matter what popular opinion is for these sorts of things. If some oil company wants their share price to go up by 0.9% so that they can get nicer options on their Bentley, who the hell cares if we hasten the destruction of our ecosystem, even if Republicans as well as non-Republicans are against it. So that's, of course, what we have to look forward to potentially.
Yeah, so I have a couple more things to say about this. For example, in Arctic waters, Obama's ban would ban drilling in about 98% of that area that we control. Canada also jumped in and said, we're right there with you, brothers. You're not allowed to drill in the Canadian portions, too. So great credit to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the rest of the Canadian government. But some of the reasons given, polar bears and bowhead whales, and those are lovely animals, and they're very cute in the documentaries that I see. But I'm a bad guy. You know, I care less about them, even though
animals are innocent.
We got to keep the fossil fuels in the ground. We got to keep them in the ground because otherwise we're going to die along with the polar bears. So that's why that's stuff. What Obama did there is monumentally important. And if you're a Republican, Eisenhower did likewise, Nixon did, George Bush did, Bill Clinton did. They all used the same 1953 law to protect portions of federal waters. And none of their designations were undone. Yeah. So there's great precedent for Republicans doing it as well. There is one way that they can undo it. Congress can just amend the law. They can say, oh, you're right, you caught us. You can't undo it according to the law. Now we're going to just change the law and we control Congress and the presidency. But in the Senate, they'd need 60 votes.
Yes. If
the Democrats can actually hold their own, because there's only 52 Republicans in the Senate.
Why would Democrats cross over on that? I mean, come on. Yeah. And by the way, so Obama is someone who, I mean, we give him credit for this. We give him credit for the big marine sanctuary. He did stop Keystone XL at one point, but he also didn't do anything on DAPL. Like, he has a sort of mixed record. And I've noticed that in an effort to make politics easy to consume and a little bit simple, people like to think really simplistically about people with complicated records. And so they might say, well, look, he didn't speak up on DAPL, so screw him. It's the same as having a Republican. Except that it's not, because a Republican, especially if it was Trump, probably wouldn't have done what Obama just did and stopped a ton of ocean land from being developed. And so you have to resist that sort of simplistic thinking of simply because I can find one thing I disagree with a person on in an area that, oh, they might as well disagree with me 100%. It makes a significant difference in action.
And finally, that's actually a great example of how you could theoretically pressure a Democrat to do the right thing. You can't with a Republican, it would seem. Because, of course, on DAPL, eventually Obama did
stop it,
deny the permit to continue for DAPL. So that was great, and he responded to progressive pressure, which my sense is that Trump is not going to respond to a lot of progressive pressure. And finally, just to give you a more laundry list of all the things that Obama did, again, it's not black and white, but he did a new rounds of pardons and commutations, which we didn't get a chance to talk about on the show. Now, again, I wish he would do more, but I'll take it, and every president does it, including Republicans. But give him credit on that. He created a national monument in Maine. He did Every Student Succeeds Act. So these are all things that last into Trump's presidency. That's why I'm listing them here. He barred states from withholding federal family planning funds from Planned Parenthood. Great. All of these are, at a minimum, take a long time to undo once Trump comes into office. And he also used a provision in the 1970 Clean Air Act to write more regulations that help protect our environment. So there's a lot that we criticize Obama on, but today's a day where you say, great job. And we asked him to take a lot of action before he leaves office, to take this opportunity while he's still the most powerful man on earth. And he did it in this case. So, wonderful. Credit where credit is due.
Thanks, Obama.
Literally. Once you become a member of the Young Turks, you're going to be thinking,
Sarabies!
TYTnetwork.com/join.